Hey everybody, welcome to Freedom Talk. I'm so glad to welcome my new friend, Dr. Robert Renteria. Dr. Renteria, welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Well, good morning and thank you. Wonderful to be here. In short, I never planned on being here. This caught me by surprise. It was about almost 2 decades ago. I released my first book called From the Barrio to the Boardroom, and I thought I was done. And if you remember back in the day when we had house phones, I got a call in the morning when the book was released because it was on the front page of the paper. And this lady said to me, "Are you Robert Renteria?" It was like 7:30 in the morning. I said, "Yes, how can I help you?" And she said, "I just read your article in the Beacon News and I have a question for you." I said, "What's that?" And she paused and she started to cry. So I asked her, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" And then she said, I'll never forget, she says, "Robert, where have you been? Where have you been?" And I stood there with chills up and down my spine, realizing not only was I not done, but the journey in my life with this whole becoming an author and a messenger for Christ, that movement had just begun.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's so glad to have you here. I want to play a little video so that as people are joining, they can see the reception that you get with young people because of your work and because of your books. If it'll cooperate with me here. There we go.
Girls, please join me in welcoming our very own international award-winning
See, now that will be my reaction when I meet you in person finally, Robert.
It's pretty incredible. I mean, if I was to tell you these stories, you wouldn't believe it. You have to see it to believe it, but it's almost a miracle in real time how these lives are transforming from these kids that are in middle schools and high schools.
Yeah, and this is close to my heart. You might be able to tell by looking at me, I'm probably not very Hispanic, but my father spoke Spanish, my older sister did. I speak Spanish. When I was 19, I went to Spain when I was starting to study Spanish. So the Latin culture has always fascinated me. A friend of mine, he's a rapper, DVS 7.0. He says that I'm Latin adjacent. So take that for what you will. But I also worked for a year out of getting my bachelor's degree as a bilingual teacher on the El Paso Juarez border. So I've been in that environment. And, Dr. Robert, tell us about your books. I want to show our audience. I have these 3 that you sent, and immediately my 10-year-old girl and my 12-year-old boy started reading these. They especially like this one. It's kind of in their age group. It's like a graphic novel, but I will say my kids got immediately interested, and I'm going to shamelessly plug your books and ask our audience to share this. We're recording this live, but share it with your friends. Please consider purchasing the books. But tell us about your books, Dr. Robert, where we can find them, the cost, and also about the curriculum that you have.
Okay, well, let's start with the first book, right? The one you showed here. It's called From the Barrio to the Boardroom. So when the book came out in January of 2008, I had no idea that many years later I'd be working with kids all over the country and around the world. But I got a call almost immediately from Chicago Public Schools. They somehow got a hold of my book and they wanted to meet. So I went and I met with the superintendent of schools at the time, and they said, "We're going to be closing a cluster of schools. We're going to have a gang problem, and we want to use your book to create what's called a culture of calm, peace building through literacy and education," they said. So a curriculum was crafted for the book that addresses conflict resolution and critical thinking. So I paid them to do it off hours, and then they gave it back to me, and I had it copyrighted. So that curriculum to teach the book From the Barrio to the Boardroom is donated at no cost. So people get a hold of me and I email it over electronically so that they can teach this book. It comes with a framework and it aligned with the Illinois State Learning Standards at the time it was written. And then, are we still there?
We're still here, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so then what happened was the following year, I get a call from RFB&D, Recording for the Blind and Dyslexic. And they wanted to create a CD to help kids that are visually impaired to have reading disabilities. So a CD was launched. And at that time, it impacts over 236,000 kids around the United States. And then the kids were telling me they're reading my book to their parents. I said, well, don't your parents know how to read? They said they don't read English. So we translated the book into Spanish. And then I wanted to reach the younger kids because the gang recruitment starts in the 3rd grade, believe it or not. So I wanted to cut the umbilical cord to that problem. So release a graphic novel, this book right here called Mi Barrio, My Barrio, My Hood. And that book came out screaming. It was voted the best graphic novel in Latin America, Spain, and the United States of America for addressing youth issues. So we released that book in English and Spanish. And I wanted to now get the pre-K, K1 and 2. So I went back to the drawing board and released this book right here called Little Barrio. So over the course of the last 2 decades, you know, we've been in middle schools, high schools, colleges, higher education, youth prisons, jails, social services, homeless shelter, better women's shelters, police, and probation. And these books are currently taught in classrooms across America and in over 25 other countries around the world. We recently got endorsed by the World Boxing Council last year, and they represent boys and girls in 176 countries around the world. So this book has got legs now, and it's used as a teaching tool. And there's also a faith inspired curriculum as well. I forgot to mention, to get our kids into Bible study, lead them to Christ. So I want to make mention that the book right here, From the Barrio to the Boardroom, when I had it edited before I released it, I had 2 different women editors, and they said, who's your target market? I said, probably kids to start. And they said, well, you talk a lot about God in the book. The schools will never take it. And I'm proud to say that over the last 2 decades, not one school has ever rejected my books in the schools because we talk about God. I think that's very important, that I found a way to bring God back into our classrooms. And so my whole thing is, my mission, part of the mission anyway, is to lift our kids up so they can spread their wings and fly like the angels God intended them to be. So that's the Reader's Digest version of how I got here in the last 20 years.
I love it. That's fantastic. I want to unpack your personal story a little bit more. And of course, that's what's covered in these books. But we just have a comment from Instagram here from the Warm Hearth, who happens to be my wife also. She says, I love that. So she and the kids are watching out in the next room. Yeah, we love this story. Everybody loves a good story. And I've had such great conversations with you. I'm going to pull my mic closer here. I forgot to do that. I've had such great conversations with you, Robert, and we've talked about everything from spirituality to politics. And I know that you tend toward the Republican side, and you've been working on helping Republicans understand the Latino American culture. Again, it's something that's close to me, but maybe talk a little bit about your experiences. And I know that your work is for people of whichever party and of all stripes and colors, and you name it. And I think it's very apropos for that. I really see an opportunity here for people to really come together and understand one another. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with the Republican Party and the Hispanic elements within the party. And I know we have some of my friends who are Hispanic and Republicans who are watching this right now.
Well, I was never really a fan of politics. I always thought of it as dirty diapers and, you know, recycling toilet paper, not just to be crude, but I thought that, you know, the one thing that I learned was everybody seemed to lie. So a couple of years ago, I got roped into going to a couple of these Republican events, and I noticed that everywhere I go was the same people. So I viewed it as a white sandbox. And I started asking questions. I says, why hasn't the Republican Party already woven into the beautiful fabric of the Hispanic communities and the Black communities as well, for that matter? And I heard a lot of excuses, and some of the excuses were pretty disturbing. So I realized, okay, so they don't have a ground game, right? They're not very relational. They're not very missional. but I saw that as an opportunity, right, to teach them and help shepherd them so that they could understand that the Hispanic community is very conservative, and we believe in our God, and we work hard, and we love our families, and we want the best for our families and our friends. And so I've been working on that for a couple of years, and it's been a slow burn. But I think it took them to lose a couple races to understand that they need to take an example out of the good book and follow that example of the Lord Jesus Christ and start to love on the people, all the people. And so it's something that I'm working on. And then about 10 months ago or so, I got tapped to, if I was interested anyway, to run for lieutenant governor here in Illinois. And I thought about it, and I saw it again as a once in a lifetime ever opportunity to really to help change the landscape, not only for our youth, but for the Republican Party to understand that you can't walk around using the same script, that I'm Christian, conservative, married with children, I own a business, and I want to save Illinois. Can I count on your vote? Can you make a donation to my campaign? The answer is no, because I don't know you. So there has to be substance. And that's what I'm trying to teach the parties. Don't tell me what you're going to do on day one. Do it now, win, lose, or draw. And they always point back to what seats they sat on, but they don't have anything that they've created or that they're working on either to help, the Black community, brown community, our veterans, etc. Right? So in that relationship game, like dating, right? If you don't take your girlfriend out to dinner and buy her flowers and candy, she's not going to be your girlfriend for long. Or if you have a garden and you don't water the flowers, what's going to happen? They're going to die. Yeah. So the Republican Party here in Illinois has been dying because it's self-inflicted. And so I'm hoping to change that, because I'm very much about relationships, and I'm trying to teach them that if we break bread, we go red. And slowly I see it coming. And so what I've been the last 10 months is, working with my networks, and we're doing really, really well. We're polling really well. I mean, God willing, this happens, I will be the first Mexican-American lieutenant governor in the history of Illinois.
Wow. That's so great. And I love that. If we break bread, we go red. And it's funny because you and I connected and we found out we know a lot of people because, for one reason, just before the election, I went up to the DNC in Chicago, where you live in or near Chicago. And I went with Mike Lindell, and we met with a whole lot of inner city voters, Black voters from Chicago, who had switched parties from the Democrats because, excuse me, I have a sneeze coming here. It's hay fever starting. So, sure sign of spring. But these people had been, Democrats probably going back generations, but they found they had been sold out to bring in illegal immigrants, and wonderful people. We had so much in common, the same complaints about the cost of groceries and different things, but they didn't want anybody to give a handout, or, they're very self-sufficient. However, every community needs some development into it, especially when we're paying taxes. And what they found was that the Democrat agenda, the radical agenda, was just to bring people in illegally and have everybody pay for it. And that really hurt them. And I think it meant a lot for them to sit down with us, with others, and tell their story and find that common ground. So that if we break bread, we go red really resonates with me. We both know Tyrone out there who's doing his work in Chicago, going to be running for Senate. So,
right.
Give us the situation right now in Chicago and how your work is affecting that area, because I do see a lot of people who have felt, disenfranchised by politics, and what they're hoping is that the conservative side will do better for them. How's it going so far?
Well, it's well received, and we've had something like 800,000 migrants who were brought over, illegals, and they are being housed, and they're being given, food cards for their links and their clothing, their medical, and it's hemorrhaging an already problematic budget that we have here in Illinois. So I think what they did, it woke a lot of people up to saying, why are you doing this? When they realized they were brought here so they could be eligible to vote, and to make up the numbers for the loss of people who've left here in the census numbers. And then also the current governor here had passed a bill that he was going to fund the college education for all the illegals as well. It just created an uproar, and people started pushing back. Enough's enough, basically, and it opened the opportunity for the Republican Party to have these conversations. Although, as I mentioned, it is slow burning for most of them because they don't understand that it's not. People aren't different. We're all. It should be one nation under God, in the invisible, for liberty and justice for all people, not just the country club Republicans or the champagne Republicans, as I call them. So I've been very vocal about getting out of the white sandbox and meeting the people where they're at. The Black community has embraced what I've done because it's about helping kids. It didn't hurt that in 2013, I was the first Latino in the world to receive 2 national Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. awards for my work as a civil rights leader and a Latino voice in educational reform. So that opened a lot of doors to the Black American community for me, as well as the Latino communities who I've been here for 35 years. So there's a lot of relationships, and that's what it really has to boil down to. If you're going to win, you have to have relationships, and that's why I talk about breaking bread. I think that there's groups now in Chicago. I know there's groups now in Chicago, including Tyrone Mohammed, who's working on prison reform and recidivism. Because my books are in all the Illinois state prisons. There's 28 prisons out here, so a lot of the inmate population here knows me, and I've met with the current gang members, both Black and brown. I've spoken to those who are formerly incarcerated and currently incarcerated, and they look at me as bringing a public safety tool to the schools, because nobody wants to bury their children and nobody wants their kids to go to prison. So that population, I call it, segment of the population, is really warmed up to what I'm doing and interested in voting now. And just for the sake of numbers, that population who's eligible to vote is about 1/4 of our population here. 3.5 million people who are formerly incarcerated, who have criminal records, are eligible to vote in Illinois now.
Yeah, and we have people who have felonies who were targeted by lawfare. I think, some of the J6 people who were just walking around, not really doing much,
Right.
Now have these records, and not to digress too much, but they got a pardon, but it wasn't a pardon of innocence. So they still have these records. They still can't have firearms or vote or all the rest. We need some work done. And I've talked to you, Robert, a lot about targeted parents and how people have been arrested and all sorts of things. So we have a lot of work to do. And I have to say, to your point, just because someone was accused of a crime, first of all, doesn't necessarily mean, particularly today, that they committed it, because we do see a lot of political arrests, political indictments, and convictions. But also, I think we definitely need to look at prison reform and look again at the idea that if somebody got a felony when they're 18 years old or something, and they're now in their 40s or 50s, should they still not be able to vote?
Well, yeah, that's the one reason with Sheriff Mandrick, who's running for governor, when he asked me if I'd be interested in running as his lieutenant governor, and he said that I was his only choice. He's been doing on the inside what I've been doing on the outside. So his recidivism rates go from the state of 75% to his jail at 15%. So I thought about it, and I said, if we can cut the fat, right, by say 60%, and cut, paste, and replicate that model across the state of Illinois to all counties, including all the prisons, we're talking about millions, if not billions of dollars of savings to our taxpayers. So I said, okay, here now we're onto a solution, right? And that's what really I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to fix the educational system, because they're teaching the test, not teaching to learn. And so I wanted to be part of that educational reform. So I spent the last several years in education, learning, bumping into walls and spending money I didn't have, because trying to figure it out. But the anecdotal evidence and the qualitative data is unquestionable that these kids are being impacted in real time, and the results are pretty much universal, regardless of age, race, religion, or economic background.
Yeah. Robert, I want to get a little bit more into your story, but first I want to talk about, maybe we could do some giveaways of books, and if you're open to that.
Sure.
And I thought what we might do is I'll go and look at everyone who's joined and generate a random number. And then if you get chosen, we will just send me a DM at Real Freedom Talk, or you can even email realfreedomtalk@gmail.com and we'll make sure you get that book. So I'm going to go ahead and generate a random number. And while we're waiting, I'm just going to play a short clip from a video from one of my favorite movies.
I want a queen! I need professional help.
I want to win, one of my favorites. Okay, so let's see. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So Simon Essler, 1111. If you're listening, you want a book, and we'll send you a book. Simon Essler. So let me just make sure I capture that. Send me a direct message, but I'll also reach out to you if I don't hear from you. So I also want to say, Robert, I would love to do a future Freedom Talk issue on the prison felonies, sort of prison reform. I'm talking to some people like Laura Logan right now, who's working on the Bureau of Prisons and some issues that need to be worked out there. This is, of course, the February issue of Freedom Talk magazine. Each issue tends to focus on a topic. So the February issue, very timely considering what's going on with the Epstein files, is on child trafficking. So each issue really takes a deep dive. We try to keep it accessible. It's not going to be overly academic, but you should be able to go through and thoroughly understand an issue from multiple authors. You can click through to videos. You can support our advertisers like Robert. So you go to Robert's page, you'll see his books. You can click right on there to buy. And we actually promote a lot of authors, independent authors. So it's worth checking out. And you can get a free subscription at realfreedomtalk.com, or better yet, for $5 a month or $50 a year, you can get the premium version and win some prizes, get some special content, and other goodies like that. And it helps support our work because, just like you, Dr. Renteria, we're working hard to rebuild this country. There are a lot of problems here, particularly that have cropped up since 2019, since the lockdowns and all the mess that created. So I hope you'll all join, first and foremost, because Freedom Talk magazine is the journal of truth and virtue. So truth and virtue, or you might say ethics, or as some of the founders said, without religion, without God, our Constitution is worthless. So we're aiming to restore those things. And this talk with Dr. Renteria is a part of that, because we want people to understand the truth about people who maybe grow up in different circumstances than we are. I think, Dr. Renteria, I was told a long time ago at a church of all places that I had this nebulous concept of white privilege, and it meant I didn't have problems. And I think that kind of thinking has to stop. I think it's getting better because we're all just people, and we're all Americans. And I think, I'm very interested in sort of my Celtic heritage, some of the roots there, but make no mistake, I'm an American, and I find enrichment in other cultures and other traditions. I love studying languages, but, none of us is privileged. We all struggle with life in various different ways.
Absolutely. What I'm trying to do is help people understand that we have to love each other and take care of each other, because that's how the foundation of this world was built. And I believe if we build on that foundation, then we can be a champion of this place we call home, to take care of our families, our neighbors, our community, our great city, and then beyond. And then to further answer your question earlier, I skipped over it, was they can find me on my website at fromthebarrio.com. That's from the barrio, BARRIO.com. And then if anybody's interested in reaching me directly, I have a line that they can call in at 312-933-5619. And if anybody's interested in an academic curriculum for middle schools and high schools, please call me or email me at robert@fromthebarrio.net. Again, that curriculum was crafted around critical thinking and conflict resolution, and we donated at no cost. And I do work a lot with ministries. So if you're interested in the faith-inspired curriculum, the same thing, get a hold of me and I'll send it to you electronically as well. I really think that we're onto something here, because we found something that's pulling people together. And the truth be told, that the book From the Barrio to the Boardroom, or Me Barrio and Little Barrio, is not really even my story. And what I mean by that is, although it has my name on it, it's not uniquely just the Robert Renteria story. I tell people that it's your story, it's our story. It's a story of a lot of people who come from tough places, work hard, make a lot of sacrifices, but in the end, we do
Absolutely.
whatever we have to do legally to come out clean on the other side.
Yeah.
So it's a story about hope and dreams and guts and desire. And yes, you can if you believe. Because if you believe, and I tell the kids, if you believe and if your dreams are big enough, the odds don't even matter. So at the end of the day, what I'm learning by all the stories I'm hearing and all the conversations, it is helping people to make a way out of no way. And it helps them realize that they're not alone.
Well, right on the cover of your books, it says, "Don't let where you came from dictate who you are, but let it be a part of who you become." And when I was 10 years old, my mother committed suicide, and I decided early on, that's not going to be a part of my family. That's not going to pass on. And I have a lot of compassion because of some of the health issues she was going through. But I think that's so important. Don't let where you came from dictate who you are, but let it be a part of who you become. And by the way, I put this up on the screen. Again, the website is fromthebarrio.com. And if you'd like Dr. Renteria to come speak to a group, I'd encourage you to do that. He's a dynamic speaker. He's done a TED Talk, and you can go to the February issue of Freedom Talk magazine and click right on there to watch the TED Talk. And again, his phone number's right there on the screen and his email address. It's not always that common to have this kind of access to an author, and particularly someone as accomplished as Dr. Renteria. So Dr. Renteria, Robert, thank you so much for making yourself available. There's a picture there of Dr. Renteria with some students holding up his book. The video that I played part of is there with the kids going nuts. But I found your story very compelling. And while I didn't grow up in the barrio, I have been in it, both in terms of here in the U.S. and overseas. And I've had the chance to speak to people in Spanish about the conditions, and work in Nicaragua with young boys who were addicted to huffing glue. And again, in some of those areas, we see children, and I've spoken to some people who work in child trafficking, and they're saying that, a lot of kids who maybe have come over the border or that are at risk or lost in the system, Hispanic and others, are being taken into child trafficking. So I think it's so important what you're doing, and I think it's important that kids have hope no matter where they came from.
Yeah, there's some agencies and organizations here who work with kids who are part of the human trafficking, and they're giving my book to them to help inspire them and to give them self-confidence, and as they're trying to rebuild these kids and weave them back into society. And it's a slow process there. But one of the things that I'm really big on, just to share with you, I'm really big on domestic violence. I was both a victim and a survivor. My mother and I, with my stepfather, and he was a terrible drunk. And I don't want to kill the story about the book, but I'll just share a little bit, right, where I dropped out of school and I found a new dysfunctional family called gangs. I started running and gunning, stealing and dealing. And then my real father dies because he had left when I was just 3 years old. He was a heroin addict, alcoholic. He died on Skid Row in Los Angeles, homeless. And shortly after that, I was getting involved with gangs and drugs, and I decided I wanted to find a better way, and I got myself into church and I found my way to Christ. And then from there, I joined the military, and I honorably served our country for over 7 years as a non-commissioned officer.
Yeah.
And then I came to Chicago with $200 in a duffel bag. I got a job in the commercial coin laundromat industry, building laundromats and selling equipment. And I got recruited after 6 years. It became VP of a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange. And I climbed the ladder of corporate America for 6 years. I said one night I want to have a shot, but I wasn't talking like a shot of tequila, brandy, or bourbon. I said I want to take a shot to start my own business. And I started my own business. And after 3 years, we became the #1 distribution company in the United States. And I look back, having grown up sleeping on a smelly mattress on a concrete floor in a smelly, musty basement, to having a house on a pond. And I share that not to impress you, but to empower you, because I learned in this process the two greatest days in your life are the day you're born and the day you realize why you're born.
Yeah.
So too much is given, much is expected and obligated. And so now I've dedicated my life to helping our children so they could spread their wings and fly like the angels God intended them to be. And there's been just so many wonderful things that are happening in real time in 2015, I got a call from a lady who worked with Gloria Stefan, Maria Torres. She was a choreographer, and they flew to Chicago. We met, and they turned my book into a play, sold out crowds in Chicago. And I share that with you because it was inner city kids who performed and produced in the play. And after a year, after the play had been played all over the city of Chicago, those kids told me that their boardroom is now a theater. So I got a chance to see lives transform in real time. And, I've been blessed to be able to speak across the country. And, I was up in Los Baños, San Bonito, California with the migrant farm worker families and kids. And I was asked to go to Ferguson, Missouri after the riots to talk to the kids about breaking the racial divide. And like that video you saw with all those 330 Latino kids there, I spoke to a couple of thousand Black American children over in Ferguson, and same reaction. And when it was over, they pulled me into the conference room, the superintendent, principal, and teacher. They said, "What just happened here?" I said, "What do you mean?" They said, "Well, with the way they're reacting towards you, you're not Black." And I said, "Listen, kids don't know color. Kids know love." So that's what I'm trying to bring back to the parties. We need to love each other. And I think that the opportunity upside is there. I think that, we just have to embrace the idea that we're all the same. And I tell people, if you're really truly a Christian conservative, and I believe that you are. I was speaking at a Reagan dinner, and I put my hand up. I said, "Show of hands." I said, "Who here loves the tacos?" And all the hands go up. And I went like this: "Who here loves the margaritas?" And all the hands go up. And that's what I said earlier. I said, "Okay, then, if that being the case, then I want you to take a chapter out of the good book and follow the example of our Lord Jesus Christ, and let's go start loving on all the people." And everybody's clapping, but it's coming, right? It's a slow burn, but I'm taking a lot of meetings and having them realize that you not just win races as far as political, but you're never really going to truly build community until we do that.
Yeah. Your story reminds me of such great stories throughout time. I want to say it was Booker T. Washington that, and I might be getting the reference wrong, but that really wanted a job, so he went into a place he wanted to work at and just started working, I think sweeping the floor or something, and just impressed the boss so much that he said, I like your industriousness. But it also reminds me a bit of Mike Lindell, who's a friend of mine, and I've worked for him. I worked as communications director for the Lindell Offense Fund leading up to the election, and he's also kind enough to share each issue of Freedom Talk with his audience. So I'm gonna take a clip here and send it to Mike Lindell, because you guys have a lot in common. But what would you like to say to Mike Lindell? He started as a crack addict on the streets of Minneapolis, and then built up to create, of course, the My Pillow company. Robert, what would you like to say to Mike Lindell?
I would probably just say I welcome the opportunity to speak with him to figure out how we can help more kids and in more communities, and put a dent in the whole gang violence thing, the substance abuse. As I said, I lost my father to heroin and alcohol. I want to play a big part in helping these kids when it comes to the space of violence. So, you could tell him that I'm trying to teach these kids that there's no excuse for violence, and you especially never, ever put your hands on a woman, because you see, women aren't just beautiful and smart, because women are the greatest gifts that God ever created in this lifetime. And in Chicago, 13 years, the most violent city in the country. So I'm also working with Sheriff Mendrick, if we get in office, God willing, that we're going to teach these kids that gang banging and violence is not a lifestyle, but a death style. And the ultimate weapon for our kids is not a loaded gun, but an educated mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you know, Mike Lindell's running for governor of Minnesota. In my dream world, you would be Lieutenant Governor of Chicago. Mike Lindell would be governor of Minnesota, and you could really help clean up those areas. I went to school in Coon Rapids, Minnesota, at Wayzata from 8th grade on, and then for high school, I went to Coon Rapids High School. So I have a somewhat of a past in Minnesota and Minneapolis too. So Mike, I'd love to get Dr. Renteria on your show, and we'll work on getting you on other shows as well. Because really, the world needs to read these books, see your story, watch the videos, and this nation needs a lot of healing. And mm-hmm. I lay the blame for a lot of the chaos and harm and hurt that we've seen in society, and still people waiting for pardons who were subjected to lawfare, families bereft of parents who have been targeted. And we need a lot of work and we need a lot of help. And I think in this time, you have an incredibly positive message, but also one based on reality and based on something I want my kids to understand. There's this song by Mark Broussard. He's a blues singer, and he's singing it to his son. He says, "I wish you heartache that makes you more of a man." And so for my kids, yes, I want to provide them with everything they need. I want them to have a good childhood, but I also want them to face challenges, because too easy of a life is not good for anyone. So to some degree, they can see this vicariously through what you've experienced. They've already been asking me questions about you, and one of these days I'll introduce you to them. But I can tell you're just waiting to say something here.
No, I mean, I appreciate you sharing the books with your kids. And, I think that there's a lot of life lessons in the book, From the Barrio to the Boardroom. And so there's a lot of advice without being preachy. So, I wanted to provoke thought, as I mentioned before. When a kid gets in trouble and you ask them what were they thinking, they weren't thinking, because if they were thinking, they wouldn't have done it. So I want kids to understand there's consequences for your actions. So I'm seeing that now the kid can never say that nobody told them. And the reaction you saw to those kids in that one video, that was a school in Chicago. And the way that works, I just want to share, is that they teach the book using my curriculum. And then they have a countdown where they say, Dr. Robert will be here in, say, 21 days. And then they'll have contests with poems and posters and book reports and letters to the author. So when I get there, that's what we're getting. The kids are completely inspired. So school superintendents are telling me that we have good teachers, but we don't have that, where a kid's inspired that he wants to read a book. And I want to share, if you don't mind, a couple of short stories, just so you can get a feel for the world I'm living in. But I was at a school and talking to a bunch of young middle school kids. And the way it works is I go in there and I give a talk. I get them all fired up and ready to go. We have photographs and autographs, and then we have Q&A, and then I go one-on-one with the kid. And then this one little girl came up to me. She was an 8th grader. And she says, this is before I got my doctorate degree. She says, Mr. Renteria, I really loved your book. And I said, thank you. She goes, I want you to know that I was going to kill myself until I read your book. So we saved a life that day. And that's a true story. And there's many other stories like that. There was another school early on when I first started. It was at a college. So these young adults, 21, 20, 22-ish, they were using my book in the criminal justice course. So I went in there, I did the talk, and they come over for autographs at the end. And this one girl waited for me. She came up to me. She says, Mr. Renteria, she said, how did you forgive your stepfather? Because I was abused by my stepfather. And I said, well, the greatest gift you give anybody in life is forgiveness. Why do you ask? She goes, I can't forgive my mother. And I said, why not? And she starts to shake and she starts to cry. And I pulled her in. I said, what's wrong, baby girl? And she goes, I can't forgive my mother because she knows my stepfather has been molesting me since I was in the 5th grade. Wow. And I said, have you ever told anybody? And she said, no. And I said, why not? She goes, I was afraid he'd do it to my little sister. So I reported that family, and now those 2 little girls are living with their grandparents. But that's the power of word, right? Tell your story so we could all be healed. And I didn't know what the power of word meant until moments like that, when kids are telling me that they expose themselves to me with all these terrible things that are going on. And there's a lot of other stories, that are like that you have kids that are going through some terrible times of being molested or abused. And also you got other stories where kids go back to school or they go on to college, or like me, I've had kids tell me, oh, I joined the Army just like you did. And they want to follow the footsteps or the roadmap that is in my book, or a blueprint, if you want to call it that. And, all the stories aren't bad. There's some success stories. And I think there's one story I'll share with you that I thought was kind of cute, where I was at a school signing books and manuscripts for the kids. And this little girl came up to me and she says, Mr. Renteria, she goes, I have a question for you. And I said, what's that? And she looked at me. She had these big, beautiful brown eyes. Her name was Gabriella. And she says, are you single? And I looked at her and I smiled and I said, yeah, why'd you ask? And she reaches out, she puts her hand over my hand. She starts to rub my hand. She says to me, my mommy's single. And so that's, it's so cute that this little girl wanted me to, maybe be her stepfather, right? You introduced me to her mom. So, I mean, there's beautiful stories, and there's also horrific stories of things that are going on and everything in between. I've had adults tell me that they quit their job because of me. And I said, why'd you do that? He said, well, if you could do it, I could do it. And they started a business. right? I've had gang members tell me that they got out of the gang after reading my book and went out to live productive lives and gotten away from that, as I did, because I was involved in that space. And I actually had to move away. I moved out of LA, going to the army. And from the army, I came here to Chicago. So, it's provoking thought at the end of the day, and helping people to understand that they too can make a way out of no way. And the big part is really that they're not alone. Sometimes we think we're isolated, and we're at home, we're trying to self-medicate, looking for the answer at the bottom of a bottle. But the answer is within you, as I had the answer within me. So that book, From the Barrio to the Bottom, is a teaching tool, literally. And it has all kinds of different applications. So it's not just kids. It's not just, people in prison or people in trouble. I mean, the book had been used by McDonald's, IBM, General Mills, General Motors, and Boeing. They use that as a book, calling it Navigating Through Corporate America, No Glass Ceiling. So it has a lot of verticals. I've spoken to people, say beyond the subculture, people doing 25 to life. And then I've spoken to CEOs of corporations and everybody in between. So I'm really blessed that this book's got legs. It's in several countries, as I mentioned before. And I welcome the conversations I have with people about what we can do to have a social impact, to help build communities. And my phone number's there. I threw it out there, my website and my email. I just encourage you, please reach out and figure out what we can do together to make truly America great again. I mean, we're going through so many hard times right now. We really need to unite.
I couldn't agree more. And, sometimes people feel helpless. They say, what can I do? I'm just one person. Well, first of all, so am I. And I've worked very, very hard at it and continuing to work. And I know what it's like to feel hopeless because, I started out by just going to events and introducing myself to people who were famous and who are you? You're nobody. But I did that in order to try to help people and get attention for real families. And I think, one of the things we need to be doing is making sure that we're not isolating ourselves. We're not throwing up our hands in hopelessness, and that we're going out into the community and to our neighbors and getting to know people. And, just listening to someone, just hearing their story and telling them, hey, I care about you. That means a lot. I'll tell you, Robert, every day I have families contacting me. I have families contacting me where like Michael Castillo's family, if he doesn't get a pardon, he goes to prison and his family will have no provider and be destitute, or any number of parents who are targeted. And I have, a doctor who I'm going to talk to later today who was subjected to lawfare, and Dr. Ganesh, I believe it is. And just sometimes I feel helpless. Like, what can I do? I can keep speaking out. I can use my platforms. But honestly, just saying, look, I care about you. I'm here. I care about you. That means a lot. And I do feel helpless sometimes. I go up to DOJ. I go up to DC. I get turned away, rebuffed. I'm working on some of those issues right now to bring some accountability, because as common folk, we deserve some justice too, not just the elite. But just knowing that somebody cares is a lot. And I know that Dr. Renteria, I know you care. I can
100%. Advice that I give the kids, and I'll give it to the adults as well. It's okay to ask for help, not because you're weak, because you have to remain strong. There's a difference between a hand out and a hand up. And I know because of pride, pride, is good, right? It makes you strong, moves you along, but it also gets in the way. So my advice would be, ask for help. I mean, generally, if you ask anybody, hey, could you do me a favor? The natural response is going to be, sure. What do you need? So, let's say you're not alone. Just ask somebody if you're in a dark spot or if you need help just getting over the hump. I mean, even right now, I'm asking for help to get the word out so that we can go ahead and get this book in the hands of as many kids as possible, and exchange the books for all the guns, knives, drugs, needles, booze, and even the cigarettes. And so, we have to help each other. And that's just how I operate. If we spread the love, we spread the bread, and everybody eats.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And by the way, I did another random drawing, and Afamado won. And I listed the two winners, Simon Essler 1111 and Afamado 1. I randomly chose them to win. I want to digress for just a minute and tell you that if you know some authors, or if you're an author yourself, we do in Freedom Talk magazine, we publicize authors we always appreciate it when someone has a budget to help us with the work we do. One of the great ones is there's such a great story behind this. AJ Elliott has written this. She's written several books. One of them is this book called Windwriter. My daughter loves it. She not only listened to the audiobook, but she read and a copy of that. And I'm just going to go ahead and say right now, if you're watching, I have another copy of Windwriter. If you say, I want Windwriter, first person to say that, well, I'll send it to you. I'll send you a copy of that. So I've also done the American Gulag Chronicles, which are 3 books about J6 prisoners, some would say J6 hostages, in their own words. And I think it's important, if you want to get these books, go to Letters from Prison. Let me find it here. When I'm lettersfromprison.us, when I'm focused on so many things at once, my short-term memory goes. Lettersfromprison.us to check those books out. And then I just have another one that I'm working on. I just wrote a book review, and it's called Is the Government Legally Killing Us? And it's written by a father whose Down syndrome girl, he called her his best friend. She died at 18 because of the COVID treatments. And I think he has a very interesting perspective on all of these things. So if you go to realfreedomtalk.com, look up the past few issues of Freedom Talk magazine, you'll find these books. This one, we haven't put it in yet, but one thing I can do too is myself and my wife can write book reviews for the Epic Times and others. So Wonder Gina 75 said, I want Windwriter. So you know where to find me because you've texted me before. So we'll send you that copy of Windwriter. Thanks for expressing your interest. So Dr. Renteria, I also want to thank you for putting me in contact with some of your people, and we've been sharing contacts back and forth. And this is something else I want to encourage people to do is, share your network, share your contacts. The more bonds that we have as Americans, and I'd like to say sane Americans who hold, like much of the Hispanic community holds what you call traditional values. Instead of this radical Marxist garbage that's infiltrated our country, the more we bond together and band together, the stronger we're going to become. So real quick, I just want to show you, this is a great story about just one of the books that we've marketed for someone. And Robert, we're going to share your stories too. I'm going to get a testimonial like this, but Abigail Elliott, this author of Windwriter and other books, said, Kelly and his team have been so great to work with. Their support and enthusiasm for what I'm doing makes it more than an advertising opportunity. It's more like joining a community. Now, on your right, you'll see Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeyer, who's a friend of mine, and he was dismissed from the military because he called out radical Marxism in the military. President Trump restated him. He's now the Undersecretary of the Air Force. Another great story, Robert. And Abigail said, on a side note, the day after we met at Union Station, she met with me to hand me off these books, one of which Gina's going to be sent. I was leaving my office at the Pentagon, and the Undersecretary, Matthew Lohmeyer, came walking down my hallway, which has never happened, even though we work in the same building. He said, hey, what's your name? Because he recognized me from the picture you sent him. So I had texted a picture. So we had this brief conversation about my book. It was completely random, but it made my day to get to shake his hand. So lots and lots of stories like that. AJ Rice, White Privilege album, we helped him with that. We helped him sell out on Amazon within 48 hours. Robert, we hope to have similar results for you. And again, if you're watching, Robert, tell us, again, where people can buy your books, sort of the price range, and also how they can get your curriculum.
Okay, well, I do also have an audiobook. I did my own read last year, so we're on Audible, From the Barrio to the Boardroom. The books are $14.95 plus shipping. The Little Barrio, we blow it out at like $4.95. That's for the pre-K, K1 and 2. The Me Barrio graphic novel is 3rd grade and up. And the book From the Barrio to the Boardroom is top middle school and up. To get your curriculum, you can contact me directly at 312-933-5619, or you can reach me through my website at fromthebarrio.com. There's a lot of content out there. You can always just Google my name, Robert Renteria. And again, my email is robert@fromthebarrio.net. Both curriculums are donated at no cost, academic curriculum and a faith-inspired curriculum. And again, it's really important. The schools are looking for culturally relevant programming. In 2018, they took a 2.5 billion away from after school programs and counselors. So there's a big need for something that's working. So that's where we're going to just donate it to make sure we help as many kids as possible.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Renteria, we're coming up on an hour, and I just want to thank you for your time. We'd love to have you back and tell more of your story. So guys, go to Dr. Renteria's website, fromthebarrio.com. Check out his books. Get that curriculum. I mean, we homeschool. My lovely wife does that, learning as she goes. And Sam Sorbo is a friend of mine. She does a lot with homeschooling. I know we're going to get your books to her, but please reach out, get these books, get the curriculum. Great cultural enrichment for your kids. And we live in a time when, yes, we want people to come here legally. And I recognize, if you can read in some of my past issues, that unrestrained, unlawful immigration can be used to destroy a country. However, a lot of the people who've come over, first of all, we have people who've been here legally, who've been here for generations, and some people have come here rather innocently, and we still need to care about them because they're human beings. So I think it's great. Like I said, I speak Spanish. I'm going to be teaching my kids and my wife Spanish, and we need, I think, we have to be careful as Americans that we don't fall too much into isolationism, because it's really enriching for our souls to learn another language, or even to delve into cultures, because God created these cultures. He fostered these languages. So I think there's a line between having a lawful society and having secure borders, and remembering to be a human being, a compassionate human being, not becoming xenophobic. I've met so many, every time I see people, and I can tell sometimes they're probably here illegally, I go up and speak to them in Spanish, and I get to know them. And I don't want them to feel fear. I do feel like, we need to have a secure border, and probably send some people back. But that's problematic too. And I'm getting into other issues, but a lot of people went through great pains to get here. They went through the border. Sometimes people were raped, lost children. I lived in Tucson, Arizona. I've been down to the border. I've seen areas where there's just a bunch of backpacks and clothes and things. So a lot of these people have been abused to getting here. Let's have law and order, but let's also remember to show compassion for the people who didn't come here that just came here to make a living. So, Dr. Renteria, thank you so much for your time, and visit realfreedomtalk.com. We're going to put up all your information, and remember to subscribe to Freedom Talk magazine for free. Any parting words, sir?
I want you to teach our kids that we need to love each other. And I got asked the other day, why are you running for lieutenant governor? You're not a politician. And I said, I'm running because I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
I love that. Love first, balanced by justice, I think, is what we need to do. So thank
Amen.
you. And thanks for joining Freedom Talk. And thank you all for joining up, and reach out to me, and we'll get you those books.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, Dr. Renteria.
You too.
America's founders warned that without knowledge and virtue, no nation can remain free. Yet through the steady infiltration of Marxist ideology, we have been stripped of both, and we are no longer a moral and educated people. To save America, we must spark nothing less than a national renaissance. That's why you need Freedom Talk magazine, the journal of truth and virtue. We cultivate enlightened thinking and principled living, offering unique insights into the issues and remarkable people defining our world. Sign up today for your free subscription to Freedom Talk magazine and join the new American Renaissance.